Welcome to day 2 of Extraordinary Women in Tech. Now, many of you remember yesterday, exactly on the spot, Fariba delivered such a powerful reminder for us about sisterhood. Life is like a journey that would definitely be more joyful if we have sisterhood. I'm also very happy to see a lot of allies in the room with us. And yes, this journey would be much more fun with allyship. But we also all know sisterhood, allyship, just these are probably not enough to get us through this journey, to get us to what we define as our own destiny, our own definition of being extraordinary or ordinary. So what is extra? What is that must-have in addition to the amazing sisterhood, to the amazing allyship? Now, that exact question I was asked back in March. So in March, International Women's Day, I was interviewed for a global celebration there, and I received a list of questions. As usual, I took that list home. I was doing my homework. And of course, I went to my husband, as I always do, that we brainstormed. And as I was thinking out of that list of questions, one question says, what is one word, Jin, that you'd like to share with other women? And we were brainstorming, and my husband bursted out. DIY, he said. That is exactly your journey so far, and that is the word you're going to share. You see, I'm a good listener. So yes, I did share that word back in March, and I'm honored today, besides sisterhood, besides allyship that we focused on yesterday, that we're here going to talk about one word. And that's the word of DIY. And my hope is this one word would help you, help each of us as we get on this journey together. So as we all know, DIY stands for do it yourself. Thank you. And I'm going to unpack that a little bit. So allow me this opportunity, and we'll go through them one by one. First, do. Raise your hand here in the room if you know you are a doer. Just do it. Look around you, right? We all are. Women are especially good in taking that responsibility, getting things done. We deliver. Choose the path of doing is never easy, but it should never be hard, because that's naturally in all of us. And every time in my journey, as I chose the path of doing, I'm often rewarded, a lot of times unexpectedly. I'll use an example back in early of 2020. So as many of you know, there is a global celebration for women and non-binary people in tech, and that's called Grace Hopper Celebration. It stands for GHC. And usually every spring, they put out a call for abstract. And by the way, that is very selective and difficult to get in, right? So spring of 2020, I said, I am going to put in an abstract to talk about infrastructure, scalability, and why we should do that in a socially responsible way to focus on sustainability. So I started working the proposal. But it was not a great timing to work on something extra. This was March of 2020. The pandemic just hit us. And for me, working in capacity engineering for Meta, work was intense, full of risk mitigation, right? The container ship is no longer coming. What are we going to do with the data center that's waiting for, that whole container ship of servers? So work was tense. At the same time, almost 2 weeks later, the kids came home. They're now doing virtual schooling. You guys relate to this? And all of us worrying about our family, health, everything that's going on. So it was not a great time to put in something extra. I decided to do it. And I was lucky that I found a couple of panelists who stick through this tough time with me. So we find time in the evenings. We made time over the weekends. And of course, as a result of that, our abstract was not only accepted by full review, so there were 3 reviewers, all anonymous, and each of them give us the thumbs up, but we also delivered it pretty successfully to the point that one lady, actually a couple of them, one from India, one from Grace Hopper Celebration EMEA, the second spring, wrote to me, and I've never still met them up to this day, to say, I just want to thank you for delivering a session and really opened up my view about what is that a girl can do in tech. I have always thought in tech, that means I have to write code to program an iPhone app. And now I can see, I like your field. Infrastructure seems to be interesting. And yes, I'd love to do something that's meaningful about our Earth, about sustainability. Right? So that was very encouraging. I feel very much rewarded. Now, fast forward to the summer of 2021. So that's more than a year away from that moment of deciding on doing. I got a call from a TEDx curator who's putting together TEDx Mountain View 2021. And she said, Jen, I have a theme, and I suspect you may be a good speaker, but do you have a topic right now that allowed me to see whether that's a good fit? I said, I do. I just wrote this one last fall. I think it's very relevant to the theme you have, and let's give it a shot. Now, look back. If I did not decide on that moment of doing, with everything going on in the pandemic, I wouldn't have got rewarded by the young women who came to me and says, thank you for inspiring me, opened up my view of my career search. And absolutely, I wouldn't have the opportunity to get on that TEDx stage, which is the big part of my bucket list for all these years. So by doing, I was absolutely rewarded. Doing is worth it. Now, doing is never easy. As I shared, doing these work wasn't easy. Even preparing my TEDx talk wasn't easy. I worked on it for 6 months. I watched so many TEDx talk or TED talk related to the topic, right? How to present a fairly boring technical topic. To the point that my curator says, you are now forbidden to watch any more TEDx talk because you're just completely losing yourself. You're second guessing everything, so you need to stop. And I recited my 9-minute speech for so many times that even when I was hosting family visiting, every day, in and out, as I go to a bathroom, I was like, I'm going to do it for 9 minutes. I'm done coming out. So this is how I practiced, right? Now, notice, all of you, I know, can relate to the story. We are not alone in choosing the do and figuring out how ways to get do. And in fact, with this, I'd like to share a story from Anna. So this is Anna. And Anna and I met when at my Stanford product class. I've been teaching there for 5 and 6 years. A wonderful thing when we convert to virtual is I now get to have students from all over the world. So Anna signed up from Sweden. And Anna get to join us today here in person, right? So and this is our first time meeting each other in person. Throughout this entire semester, or this Stanford quarter system quarter here, she's always engaged. She always chimed in with comments, meaningful questions. She pitched in so much that her group delivered a very compelling product proposal. So at the end of the semester, I had no doubt that Anna got the worth of this class, and she got an A from me. Then Anna posted on LinkedIn celebrating for herself. I would have never known that she was juggling with poor internet connection, class after class. She was using this iron board as her desk, and she's there constantly supporting her children while taking the class and actively engaged with her full self. As she is celebrating here, I wanted to again share with you, doing is hard, but doing is in all of us. If you can relate to that story and relate to the way Anna was able to keep at her goal and at her dream, raise your hand again, and let's also give a big round of applause for ourselves, for all the doers, including Anna, who joined us here today. Let's move on to the second letter, shall we? Let's talk about I. I stands for it. What is your it? What is your it for the moment? Are you thinking about that phone that's buzzing? Are you thinking about possibly going back and you had to work late to catch up something at work? We all have our own it. But recognizing what is the it that you want to focus on in that moment, in that stage of life, makes a big difference. And I really have to share that a lot of us can be trapped by our it. I was one of them. I did not have a good grip about it. I remember back in 2027, I was an engineering leader at IBM, and I was at a critical moment working with a customer, a major bank out in Zurich, who was dissatisfied with our product. For that reason, I had a Tuesday 7:30 meeting to show progress, to check status. 7:30 meeting with my customer over in Zurich means I need to get my son, 3-year-old at the time, up at 6:15. And 6:15, so that would allow us to leave the house at 6:30, drop him off at 7 so that I can get to the office and dial in at 7:30. This was 2007. After all these years, I remember one thing. At 6:15, when I tried to get him to get up, he would try to roll inward so that it's harder for me to reach him from the bed. That was a hard moment for me. That was extremely hard for me. Now, fast forward, I want to share a different story about how that it was chosen by a colleague of mine. So here is Zainab. Now, Zainab is a colleague of mine in Meta. She leads our infrastructure data science team. And a couple of months ago, Zaina and I, along with quite a few team members, were working on a major review, a major business review. So one afternoon, as we were getting ready, I had some final questions. I messaged her, and I said, I need a few more data points, some questions we need to double down. How about tomorrow morning, if we can meet together at 9 o'clock, we will round it up and just in time for the midday critical business review. Next morning, right before 9 o'clock, I logged in. Here comes Zainab's reply waiting for me. She said, Jin, I'm sorry I cannot meet you at 9 because I need to drop my son off at his summer camp. This was summertime. We all can relate to this. She said, however, I'm sending in who and who, another team member, to meet with you. I also did some query ahead of time for the questions you're looking for. These can potentially be the starting point for the answers you're looking for. It worked out beautifully. It was just cool. And I noticed how many of you were nodding your head because what you're thinking is just like how I felt at the time, applauding Zainab for her courage to choose that it, to juggle, but make sure she wasn't juggle at 9 a.m. while driving and taking a call. We all know there are better ways to lean on each other to get things done and where we are the critical path and much needed. So I went back to Zainab, thanking her, and asked her, may I feature you for this speech I'm preparing, right? And as it turned out, Zainab says, of course, do that. And she also took this photo, this precious one, to share with all of us. This is Zainab, his son, having dinner while catching up with her husband. And by the way, her husband is recovering from COVID in this photo, so he's quarantined. And with that, if you can relate to the meaning of I and know where I had failed and my colleague has done way better, please give a round of applause to Zainab, who's joining us right there. I've been preparing this moment for a while. And I happen to have amazing women in my community where I can just pull up story like this. But the key thing here is all of these are pretty ordinary. I guarantee you these are happening with you multiple times and maybe all the time. So know that these are nothing special. These are already in all of us, that we just need to organize them, put them into a toolkit, and stuff that into our backpack as we get on the journey. Let's move on to our third letter. And that third letter is Y, for yourself. This means take care of yourself. Now, I'm going to start with the very first sector, which is take care of yourself intellectually. So I'm going to go to that physically next. I know that's on our mind. We will go there. What do I mean about take care of ourselves intellectually? I'm sure all of us in this room are leaders. What do leaders do? Leaders go support our teams. Leaders go unblock our teams. And this means every day we have this desire of serve others. And we are constantly busy watching who's pinging me. What are the questions? What are the requests? What are the messages? Let me make sure I get them responded so that we don't block team members. But these can also overwhelm our calendar, our days and nights. And these may potentially get us blocked from truly being that leader, thinking about things and topics that has not yet been raised by team members. That is what we also meant to do here. So as an example, I work for Meta. I lead capacity engineering. I do not necessarily have to get pinged by how our Instagram Reel is taking off, how that business is doing, or how is our Messenger business messaging require a couple of key features. Those are the key focus of my colleagues. Yet, if I did not spend the time to go seek out those information, I wouldn't have enough contacts there to brainstorm with them, to bring ideas for them, to initiate potentially something that was not quite on the table. And we all have to remember as leaders, we need to look at something not only further down the road, but also that blank spot, that empty canvas that needs this beautiful very first stroke. So what I did, partner up with my EA, is I decided that my Fridays are going to be meetingless days. Not meaningless, but less. And this allows me, well, I know what's feasible, right? Meaningless is not very feasible. So what we decided to do is this would allow me to have time to think, am I leading or am I merely enjoying being busy? We all enjoy that, right? Because we're serving a purpose, but that may not be enough. So that's super important for us to think about how to help us to learn and take care of ourselves in this intellectual way. And that will get us continue to learn and grow, almost like here in the last 2 days, right? How much I have learned from many of you, both on stage, but also throughout our interactions. Now, of course, we have to talk about taking care of ourselves or taking care of yourself, this big Y here, physically. Science has proven when we're physically ready, emotionally, intellectually, we are much better being our whole self, that we can serve, that we can lead, and that we can think. My favorite role model is this lady here. Raise your hand if you've read her book, Becoming. Who can tell me the story she talked about there about what did Michelle do to take care of her, herself physically? Anybody can shout out that story?
She goes to the gym in the morning, right, with her kids, and she figured out how to get her kids taken care of.
Thank you very much. So it really touched me that moment, right? She made a deal, and she had the courage to call to help to mom, in this case, so that grandma come into the house at 5:30 every morning, Chicago winter, imagine that, so that grandma stays with the kids who are still sleeping, and Michelle gets to go to the gym. What a level of discipline. What a level of prioritization. I'm sure she would love to snuggle just a little bit longer there too, right? But she's deciding what is possible for you, and in order to prioritize that one goal, what is the must do? In fact, she said the very best for this quote. We need to do a better job of putting ourselves, and this is the why here, by the way, higher on our own to-do list. On our own to-do list. I'm sure you all have your to-do list. Yourself there, please add an item 0 before your first item 1 there, and put it there to say yourself. Whether that's a meditation, a walk, go hide in the bathroom for 10 minutes. Many of you guys can relate, right? Put yourself at the top of the to-do list. And do you notice that by now, we're back to to-do list? And that's the word of D for do. And that's kind of what I want to share. It is really nothing, earth-shattering. We all know how to do. We need to constantly think about it. What is the moment of it? We need to think about why and put yourself up to the very top of your to-do list and carry these with you. Just literally carry them with you so that you have these always available in your journey. And someday, some moment, for example, as you're about to, end of day here, leave this energizing conference and drive home, you may feel you're a bit off on that it, right? You got a day of work and family to catch up. You've carved out this extra time. Just be patient with yourself and say, I'm going to focus on driving, and I'm going to reset it. I'm going to redefine my it. My it can include many things, but there will only be one it at that exact moment. Give yourself that permission to say, it's okay. I am such a doer that I get to go catch it up all later on. But at this moment, it's going to be my wellness, my mental calmness, whatever we chose to do, that I'm going to focus on the moment here. So now we've rounded up and we've talked about this journey of DIY. I hope at this moment you gain a new perspective about how practical DIY means to you. DIY always means about doing something super practical here. And again, as we get on this journey, if we look back, what we talked about yesterday whole day, right? Sisterhood, allyship, the ability to juggle work and life. I think we had an excellent panel there, right? And today, we're going to continue to talk about all the skill sets, the ability to set that vision, to lead. And just remember, you don't want to forget yourself throughout this entire journey. And as I mentioned earlier on, a journey can be hard, but a journey can be a lot more fun with sisterhood, with allyship. On top of that, if you also have a little bit of trick in your tool bag, if you have to put in one word there, allow me to leave this one word with you today. That is DIY, the path to extraordinary. Thank you all.
So Jen is happy to do some Q&A. If anyone has any questions, please raise your hand. I'll bring you the mic. All right.
This was amazing. DIY, do it yourself, and turning it into, how you put yourself on top of it. My question is, infrastructure is typically a field dominated by not the females. And, and even in my experience, when you work with the majority of old school, I shouldn't say men, but yes, they feel that why is women in this space, and there are it's difficult, right? There are prejudices. How have you been able to convert it along? And what I mean to say is there's a cultural shift, right? You need to be able to still work with them together as a team, and have them see your potential, right? That's a difficult job to do. Very difficult than getting the infrastructure and technology working.
Thank you very much. How many mics do we have? Do we have more mics in the back? Because what I like to do is I always call for help. So I'm going to actually put a male colleague of mine on the spot. Dario, I'm coming to you. So as I walk over, and he's totally unprepared, right? No answer can be better than me pulling in a colleague who's a dude that I team up with all the time. And he would share his perspective for all the women here about if we want to break into a male-dominated field, let's say, infra, the boring, dark infra. What should we do to open that door?
That's a good question. So we were just commenting here in our table that I'm lucky. I'm a data scientist. So I don't work in actually the actual real sort of infrastructure like Zhang does. I actually just look at this as a supporting team. And we are lucky enough that our numbers in terms of female-male ratio is actually pretty good. We were just commenting, I think we just missed our 50-50 in the manager side, but we are actually, in terms of the people, we are actually pretty much 50-50 in terms of like male-female. So being a data scientist, I will say, well, choose that path to get into. That will be a good one because we are much more open and we have a much bigger funnel. But I think your question goes back to culture more than this, how do you get in? I think the times are changing. So I think that is helping you, that I think most of my colleagues, I think if I speak for them, they don't see the difference between a male and a female. I think if everything in Meta, the people sort of diversity and inclusion is actually, it helps the team to actually perform better. So I think we gladly actually would like to increase the numbers. The biggest problem that we have is actually how we increase the funnel to actually get there. In terms of like, if there is still jerks, call them out. I mean, they are like what they are, and think nobody likes jerks. I mean, in the male or the female side, it doesn't really matter. Be yourself, open up, speak up. I think it's, whatever your mom told you when you were growing up, I think the same applies for us to actually find your way into the job site. I think females bring a beautiful aspect to the team. I have 2 daughters, so that's why I get emotional about it. So, yes, just be yourself, I will say. That will be my advice.
Thank you so much. Well, we didn't plan for this, but this worked out really good. Do we have time for one more question? All right, we'll do one more question. And as I walk to the next question here, I also want to mention, we have some amazing talent here, like Eva in the back, who wrote a book after interviewing 70 guys and carved out how to nurture allyship from guys in tech. So make sure you guys read her book, talk to her, but let's go to the second question.
Thank you for the talk. I think why putting yourself first, it's important. My question is, when you tend to be a doer, do it yourself, how do you balance that with delegating the tasks to someone around you in a way that it reflects that you care about that, but you still want the other team to get involved?
This one is about delegation, which is tough. I think women, I'll get back on here and wrap up about the delegation part. That was a weak spot for me because it was, not only I like control, I like perfection, right? But I also sometimes at work worry if I delegate, would higher up there see my effort, my contribution, right? Would this overshadow me? I had those thoughts throughout my career. I had to learn, and I'm still learning how not to be so tight in controlling and be a perfectionist. For example, these days I have young adults at home. If it's my son's turn to do the dishes, then I have learned I cannot dictate him to use the dishwasher or wash it by hand. I just have to learn to accept that, right? And if he chooses to lay out the dishes in the dishwasher a different way, as long as they're clean, I need to be okay with that. Similarly, right, one thing as a parent, which I know many of you can relate to, and I do my parent learning, I think, more in so much way that I ended up benefiting that as, make me a better person overall, right, is when I work with my husband and when I had to delegate to my husband, for example, taking care of the kids and taking care of the household, right, which I do a lot, and I've been lucky to have that partnership for the last 26 years. I do travel a lot for business, right? I cannot dictate how he runs the household, right? They often drop me off at San Jose Airport and call me from McDonald's when I'm still at the airport, right? I need to be okay with that. And luckily, my kids grew up still pretty healthy, and I'm very proud of them, right, as young adults. Similarly, it is true for work. Sometimes it cannot be perfect. You need to let your team members do it their own way. They have a different style. If I had preferred to do one-on-one, close on some key decision before I put it in a group, they may be the one feel comfortable to do it just out in one shot. Allow them to try their way. And if that fails, they can learn, and you can go help them to recover, right? And then as far as leadership is concerned, over time, you just become more secure. You know who you are. You know your worth. And even in this one time or two times of, completely, not only completely, sharing credit, but also hiding your contribution will not damage things you do long term. So delegation is a wonderful topic for women. I definitely think, for the rest of the day and rest of the conference, we should talk about that more. And I would encourage all of us to share tips and hints just to help each other. I think with that, we need to wrap. Is that correct? So thanks again. Remember, DIY.